Welcome to the Dreamboat. This is where we explore everything to do with dreams.
We are sponsored by the DRI Centre for Dream Studies, and you can find out more about our work in the show notes.
You can join us here every fortnight or at one of our dream courses, workshops, or retreats. Thank you for coming on board.
Have you ever had one of those weird dreams about members of your family, like a brother or sister, or even your children, and found that they have had the same dream as you? Or that your dreams have shared similar symbols and imagery? So what is that about? My guest today is a clinical psychologist, author, and popular poet, Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum. Bruce has written powerfully about those weird family filaments, as I call them, that get shared during our dream life, and has studied it at length, first with his Family Dream Research Project. Director of Behavioral Medicine at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, he was the winner of the prestigious Abraham H. Maslow Award from the American Psychological Association. He is also author of The Dream Life of Families, Psycho-Spiritual Connection, and the fascinating and seminal work, Our African Unconscious, The Black Origins of Mysticism and Psychology, which I'm also hoping he's going to talk about. So, Dr. Bynum, welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here. This is exciting.
It is actually, and I'm really fascinated by your work. It's everybody keeps saying to me, you've got to get Bruce on board. He's really interesting, and so I'm really pleased that we've managed to catch up with you in your hectic schedule. So I suppose my first question really is, what actually got you interested in this line of psychology, working with family dreams? Did you have a sort of dream of your own? Did something crop up in your own life that made you think, oh, that's a great line to go down?
Well, actually, I trace it back to my own childhood. I was a very vivid dreamer in my early childhood and certainly through my adolescence. And I was always interested in dreams, how intense they were. I had no idea what they might mean. Plus, I grew up in parts of the United States where there were traditions of people, usually they were your grandparents and so forth, who would talk about dreams, and they would talk about their ancestors that are coming in their dreams and so on. So I grew up in a situation where, the meaningfulness of dreams was not in doubt. It was just what it might mean and so forth. And then when I went to university, I maintained my interest in that. I'm still a vivid dreamer. And then eventually graduate school and so forth. And actually, my first interest in graduate school, which by the way, I was not allowed to pursue, although I asked, is I wanted my dissertation, my doctoral dissertation, I wanted to study dreams and telepathy.
Oh, yes. Great subject.
And it's interesting, my supervisors and professors were all very interested in it, but nobody wanted to be officially involved with it.
Yeah. I had the same problem. I was very interested in telepathy and what I called the psychic space in psychotherapy, because there is something psychic that happens between you and the client, to the point you do share dreams as families members do.
Freud wrote about it extensively. Jung wrote about it extensively.
Yeah.
So they knew about it. Yeah.
Freud said apparently that if he hadn't developed his thoughts around and had this developing sort of psychology theories, he would have gone into studying psychic matters. He became absolutely fascinated by it.
Yes, he was. He was very fascinated by it, and at the same time, he was very ambivalent about it. There were times when Freud said, definitely our dreams have a profound psychic component to them. He noted that happening in the dreams of his patients. He noted it happening between he and some of his patients at times, not in dreams, but in other ways. And then at other times, he said, absolutely not. This is just not true. So he would go back and forth about it. Jung was more consistent. Jung acknowledged it and studied it and wrote about it very extensively. So both of them were aware of it and noted it. For me, as I was saying, I wanted to study that in graduate school for my dissertation. My professors said, no, absolutely not. They were very interested, so they said, but you can use our laboratory at night if you wanted to.
Sneaky.
Right. So they were very interested, but it was on the frontiers for them at that time. And so I did my dissertation on my second interest, which is closely allied, which is clinical hypnosis. So that's how it came through me, first in my own childhood experiences of being fascinated by dreams and moved by dreams and knowing that they were meaningful, but maybe not what the meaning was. And then in graduate school, I had a chance, and afterwards, I had a chance to more formally study it. And one of the things that happened is that one of my internships after graduate school, I took a postdoctoral fellowship year at a private psychiatric hospital. And the thrust of the therapy of this particular hospital was on family therapy. It was a big place. It was a big place in the United States, and particularly the East Coast, for studying families and using family therapy in one way or another. And I began to notice that people in families have the same associations. And so I asked them to humor me and keep a record of their dreams, but don't show them to each other. They just give them to me. Humor your therapist. And then I began to notice the correspondences in images and symbols between family members who didn't talk about it, but they just had that spontaneously. And as I looked deeper and deeper, I began to notice that there was this shared emotional and mental dreamscape and an emotional life within family members. That makes total sense. I mean, in most families, you're sleeping in the same house sometimes for decades, if not generations. You go into this mental activity roughly at the same time every night. When we go into our unconscious, our waking state boundaries evaporate, and we're in a zone, a dimension, a realm in which, much like the quantum mechanics, there are no discrete boundaries of how the energy and the information flow. And so I began to notice that happening in the family system. And I label that the family unconscious. And that is how the formal studies of that began. And then I started a few years later, a family dreams research project where I invited not only patients occasionally that I was working with, but also collecting dreams from members of the public. And so that family dreams research project went on for, at least 10 years, if not longer.
Gosh. Yeah.
And that after I collected my data, but I needed some quantitative data in addition to the qualitative. I needed the quantitative data. So I had hundreds of dreams and I categorized them. And I was able to see that there were different levels of agreement or coherence in the imagery and so forth. And so that is how that massive data came up and began to show the correspondences. Sometimes the correspondences were not only about one family member and another, but sometimes that information was shared in some sort of way. And it was shared through the dream. People would have the same dream. Now, here's a classic example that makes sense. You're not going to, okay, say there's something major that happens in a family, a wedding or a funeral, okay, major events or a birth, okay? So you have 5, 6, whatever members of a family sharing that event, then they go to sleep and it's a meaningful event. Well, several of them will dream about it because it's an important family event, but they will dream about it from a different point of view, a different angle. And I began to see it was almost like a shared hologram, where that imagery over there is not exactly identical to the other one, but they obviously are related to each other in terms of content, theme, and so forth. And that is how a lot of family dreams. A lot of dreams are. The data, statistical data indicated from other studies other than my own, is that anywhere from 15 to 25% of our nightly dream life involves a family member in one way or another.
Well, that's quite a big. But now you said it, it seems obvious. But it feels like a big stat. Yeah.
That's and it's not. It could be somebody makes a cameo appearance.
Starring.
The whole thing is about us getting along with our parent or child. The people who are emotionally important to us, they're the ones who, that percentage of the time, 15 to 25%, show up in some way or another in our dreams. And so that is what I try to elucidate in the dream life of families. It's how we share this, and that it is a normal thing.
Yeah.
Some are more outstanding or unusual than others. And those are the dreams in which something happens that involves an intense physical arousal in our bodies. Okay? A classic example of that in communication in dreams is what we call a crisis telepathy dream. And that is, there's a pattern to that. There's a pattern to that. And the pattern is often that someone is sleeping/dreaming or in a drowsy, relaxed, open-minded state. And somebody very, very close to them all of a sudden is in a state of really heightened arousal. A car accident or a medical crisis all of a sudden, or something of this nature that is extremely arousing. It turns out that oftentimes in that pattern, the person who's having the crisis thinks intensely of that loved person, of that moment, in their intense, called energized state. And the person who's in a more passive state somehow gets the imagery of that. And such that, an hour later, they get a phone call. The person, and someone says, "Are you okay?" And it says, "Well, as a matter of fact, I got into a car accident about an hour or so ago." Oh, or the situations, others like that. There are innumerable examples of that, which are put in the book. And there are other examples of that scattered throughout the literature. So that is a very familiar pattern. We don't know exactly how it happens, but we have seen what the pattern is, sort of like pattern recognition.
Yeah.
You can't predict it, but you can express it in terms of the probability of something like that happening. The probability of something like that happening. And to the extent that you are open to it, you are more likely to experience something like that than if you're closed off to it. And again, it happens between people who have some intimate correspondence with each other. It doesn't have to be totally love. It can be normal family, which is love and conflict and all kinds of stuff, the usual. But you have a connection, a family linkage. You're part of a similar pond, family unconscious, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah. I like how you put
in
it.
certain conditions, And again, it's almost like we have our familial consciousness is like a shared hologram where each part of one situation is reflected in someone else.
It's an ultimate mirroring in some way, isn't it? But it's a telepathic mirroring. That's what I find interesting.
Telepathic is the more unusual expression of that, but it happens in other ways. I mean, when we are growing up in our family, we learn how to deal with situations largely in our family context. And that's how we develop our defense mechanisms. That's how we develop our attitudes about many things. And so that family constellation is profoundly important structurally and otherwise in terms of how we manage our psychic energy, if you want to think about it that way. Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, obviously a family, it doesn't need words. There's a sort of a mood contagion that happens in a family unit, the family, as you say, the family unconscious, there's that sort of psychic sharing, or even more important, actually, a psyche sharing. It's that collective psyche of the family that each family knows and probably can't name, but there's something so familiar about it that's embedded within the psyche of the family. I was thinking when you were talking of a moment that's always stuck in my mind. It wasn't with a family member. It was with a very, very close friend that I had grown up with. And we were 18 and she was involved, or perhaps we were younger than that, actually, a bit younger, perhaps 16, 17. And she was involved in a famous tube accident, which had its anniversary recently in the UK. And a lot of people, she didn't get in the first carriage, which is what she normally got in. Everybody died in the first carriage. She was late and she got in the third carriage. And at the moment of the accident, I remember she had left school. I was going to school. And I remember I was struck. I was just struck and I was forced to stop. I don't know what it was. My heart beated, it was so profound. And I remember looking up at the sky as if to think, this feels momentous. I don't know what it is, but something momentous feels as if it's happening. It was at the minute when she was, when the accident happened.
That is what that is. And it's quite normal, but it's startling to our day-to-day reality, and it forces us to enlarge our reality and to realize that not all of our reality is contained in our theories about reality.
Exactly, that there is something so beyond all of us that we, as you say, even when you were studying, people want to dismiss, but they're also curious because they know they've experienced it themselves. I just don't understand why we're so frightened of this type of material. It's quite interesting that it is still so threatening for a lot of people.
Well, it is for a lot of people, and it borders on anomalous phenomena that is taboo in many parts of our culture and many parts of the cultures of the world. It's not as if everybody everywhere accepts this or rejects it. It's a mixed bag. But depending on the attitude of your growing up situation, your culture, people can be more or less open to it. In many traditions, phenomena like that are seen as, quote, works of the devil, unquote. Others, they're seen as a revelation, And so depending on the situation you're in and the cultural coloring of that, you are predisposed one way or the other. And when anxiety comes into the situation, we often don't react in the most reasonable way.
Mm-hmm. Are there any specific dreams from your work with families that have stuck in your mind that have had sort of, perhaps a profound impact on yourself?
Well, I can think of one that was actually a profound dream that had an impact on me even to this day. And this one only happened a couple of decades for me ago. I had a dream, and it was not a lucid dream. It was not a lucid dream, but I was not aware that I was dreaming, okay? So it wasn't that kind of dream, but it was a very vivid dream. And in this dream, there was a male figure, sort of like a very old grandfather figure. And he's sort of swimming. And he's swimming along some big lake or pond or river. And as has gotten as far as he can, he leans over to somebody else in the pond and he gives them a scroll. And then that person took that scroll and he kept swimming and swimming and swimming until he was pretty much exhausted. And as he's about to get into his exhaustion, he passes that scroll off to someone else. And that person goes through the same situation. And so he's partially exhausted. And as he's about to go down, he passes over that scroll and he passes it over to me.
Oh, lovely. Yeah.
Right.
What do you make of that? I mean,
Because I'm a writer.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is. It doesn't take a lot of analysis to see through that one. There it was.
But, the traditions in that being passed down, that baton that's being handed
That's right.
across the ages.
Right.
Lovely.
It's a very important dream to me, and I knew immediately upon awakening what that was about. That was not a crisis dream. That was more of an ancestral dream, because in addition to our family or familial unconscious, our consciousness expands out to the generations before us, to our ancestors. And in our modern day, we don't pay a lot of attention to our ancestral inheritances, but our own ancestors did, and I certainly that was the case in Africa. That was the case in ancient Britain. That was the case in many other parts of the world. Is that you revered your ancestors because that's where the wisdom was, and they passed that on to you, or they taught you, or whatever different traditions that you were in. We don't do that as much anymore. We've lost touch with that. But my sense is in the ages to come, as we redefine the limits of our own consciousness, we'll return to that. Because you and I know, as well as everybody who's listening right now, that our bodies are physical. And what we do is physical, but not all of us is physical. At the very least, our brains are made of energy and light. We know that. And they don't have any boundaries. Energy and light doesn't have a boundary. It gets compactified in matter, E equals mc squared. It gets compactified in matter, but the energy itself and the information is different. And quantum mechanics and relativity teach us this. And so, psychology and psychiatry are kind of timid these days in terms of embracing that and recognizing that our capacity for information sharing is at least the same as it is for the materials and the energy in quantum mechanics and relativity, and they're not absolutely bound by the physical parameters. And so the door is really wide open. Energy and information are not localized, as we say.
Yeah, I like how you put that, actually, because, all right, let's move away from the word telepathy, but there's this sense of, I know some people like to call it mood contagion, for instance, or limbic resonance is another phrase that's popular, particularly within herds, that herd instinct. So see the family as a herd. It's very interesting watching human herd instinct in operation that's nonverbal. And how families do just sense the mood of what's happening. And is mum going to be cross when I get home from school? Well, you can sense it before you even get to the door.
Before you walk to the front door, that's right. And a lot of human behavior is, on the surface, is supposedly driven by rationality, but we all know that there's a lot of contagion that happens. American, as far as that's concerned, international finance, as rational as it may be in some ways, is oftentimes a herd situation. Oh, that stock is hot. What are they going to do? And people operate on that. Yeah.
Even online, there's a build-up. You can sense the energy that's happening. In fact, a lot of social media posts is all about the energy. There's that sort of accumulative factor, not just on the numbers that might be watching something collectively, but there's an extra energy behind it in some way.
There's extra energy. And again, energy doesn't have any absolute boundary. Energy and information, which are very closely connected to each other, don't. And the same applies, this family unconscious that we're talking about, also applies very, very much to medical symptoms within families. I mean, there's certainly an inherited component to our propensity for certain kinds of disorders, illnesses, and so forth within families. But in some, it feels like it's learned behavior, but sometimes in others, it's not, and it's created. And we don't know exactly how we create it, but we do know that it shows itself that way. and shows up in our dreams. I'll give you a concrete example. And these are statistically based observations by medical professionals. It's been noted that when someone is under stress for some period of time, oftentimes before they have a cardiac event, that symbols of that and expressions of that will show up in their dreams. Now, it's not absolutely discrete, but in retrospect, the person can remember that they were very anxious and nervous about an uneasy feeling. And then somewhere down the road nearby, they end up having a cardiac event of one kind or another. Folks have noted that people have felt strange or ill for a while, and then they eventually go and have a medical checkup, and then they have some distressing, serious physical illness. And those are called prodromal dreams, where the symptoms are first expressed in dreams. And it makes sense. I mean, the mind and the body obviously they overlap. They're not identical, but they overlap. And so what is in your body is going to manifest in your mind. And what affects your mind will have its reflection in your physical body. It's just because we don't have a one-to-one correspondence, but we can find a pattern recognition.
The Dreamboat is a project of the DRI Center for Dream Studies. If you're the kind of person who is fascinated by the mystery of dreams and you want to learn more about the transformational power of dream work, check out our workshops, lectures, retreats, and training courses at driccpe.org.uk. Also on the website, you can support the podcast and all of DRI's work by becoming a member for just over £30 a year. That gets you discounts and first access for our ticketed events, as well as access to videos and extra material online. That's driccpe.org.uk, and you can find the link in the show notes. Now back to the podcast.
Yeah, I like how you put that, because it is patterning. And often for people themselves to realize that they have this ability or something like this is happening, is they need to see it on a regular basis or have a shared pattern of some kind for it to then become obvious.
Right. And it's not as if we want to know this. I mean, if I would bet you that if you went to the library, big library in the center of the town, city, or whatever, and you were able to show people, or you had a reputation, I should say, for being able to tell people the day they were going to die, most people would choose not to know.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
They know they're going to die, but they don't know when, and they don't want to know, quite frankly.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, you'd limit your life straight away.
You'd limit your life. You'd freak out. All kinds of stuff. There's certain areas of information that we don't want to know. Well, sometimes psychic information is like that, where there are things that are going on that we kind of don't really want to know about.
Do we really want Grandma to tell us some of this stuff?
Yeah, we want to keep that stuff unconscious.
You reminded me of a story I have heard of. Obviously at the Dream Research Institute, we get a lot of stuff sent in. I mentioned a grandma because it was a woman who had, when she dreamt of family members in the water, particularly in the sea, she knew they were ill or something was happening to them.
Right, there it is.
And this is a lovely story. And she saw one of her grandkids in the water, and her own children, her own daughter, took it seriously enough and decided to just have a few tests run on the daughter that was in the sea. And there was something there. And so this ability to react, and also, well, not react, but act actually on the information, A, is unusual, and B, it was also unusual that people took notice and paid attention to it. Because it's easy to dismiss, but
It's very easy to dismiss, yes. And we each have, as you point out indirectly, each person is going to have a slightly different imagery recognition pattern for them that is not identical to someone else. Someone else may dream of people in water, but that is not going to mean for
Same
them.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
But for the person who has had that experience and has seen it a number of times, they know that for them,
Yeah.
when
She
they
knew what that
experience
meant.
that
Yeah.
is what that means.
Yeah. It was her. I often talk about it being like a private language. We all have our own private language in dreams. And it's knowing, as you call it, the patterning, knowing that this pattern means blah or whatever it is for you as an individual. It's like I often joke about, an image like the swan for one person or the snake for somebody. It could be absolutely deadly. And for someone else, it can be the most amazing image of rebirth and renaissance in some way. So, what's your language?
What is your language? And a good dream worker, a good therapist, a good person who could help someone figure that out, that is what they do. They help them learn out their own private language.
Yeah.
And they help them be able to talk to themselves, to talk to their own souls, to their own spirit, so that they can find their way through this bewildering phenomena where we are.
Yeah. There's a lot of information and it mainly does, because it can bypass the rational mind. A lot of this telepathy, or whatever we're going to call it, this type of, I think Jung called it the third way, this sort of material that's non-rational. We can process it when we're dreaming, which is why it comes in when we're dreaming.
Right. It's non-rational, but that does not mean that it is irrational.
Yes, good point.
Because it is non-rational, but it is still coherence. It's coherent. It makes sense. It can even be replicated under certain circumstances in terms of probability. So that's not absolute control. We prefer absolute control, but we don't get to have absolute control. We have general patterns. The stock market follows general patterns. Okay, but it's not absolute. No.
As most people's portfolios will tell them.
Yeah, tell them that. You've got a good stock.
Yeah, right.
Within certain probability, okay. Certain conditions, that's probably going to be the case. But absolutely forget it. And it's not happening. And it's no different in medicine.
No, exactly. And that's what made me think about this and this particular person. I was thinking to myself, how, as a psychologist working with families, how do you help them work with this type of material?
Well, first of all, I let them bring it to me. Okay. It has to spontaneously arise in their own context and conversations with each other. I may be interested in it, but that's me who's interested in that particular thing, as opposed to what's best for the people in front of me. But when it does come up in that situation, then I first of all try to normalize it, okay? And then I present it as another form of way of communication with each other, that we have multiple ways of communicating with each other, and that it is another indication of how intimately engaged we are with each other, despite our differences about many things. So that's how I use it. And that's in a family context. It is particularly helpful, however, in a couples context, where you don't have to worry about other people in the room other than the two people here who are intimately involved with each other, because very often they'll express not only their emotional life, but also their sexual, physical life, and also where the normal stresses and strains in their relationship are, and how they can wade through a difficult time if they have a deeper connection with each other. Because, assuming when people go into something as heavy as a marriage, you're going in playing for keeps. So you're all in. You're not dangling a back door open just in case it doesn't work out. No, I'm into this. If it doesn't work out, it's painful that it doesn't work out. But you're not going into it thinking, this isn't going to work out. So there's a level of intentionality and commitment there that touches on the deep parts of us. And that is what you try and get to in deep couples therapy and also in family therapy, where people are deeply related to each other and want the other's welfare, even if they really disagree sometimes with what the other person is doing or saying. Your mother is still your mother is still your mother. And even though you may be estranged from your father, estranged from your mother, something happens to them, you're upset.
Yeah, you'll know about it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's funny, I had, again, somebody had sent us in a really interesting story about she had been estranged from her mother for many years, 20, 30 years, had no dealings with her or the family for a long time for interesting reasons. But she knew the day her mother had died. She dreamt about it.
That's right.
I find that just quite...
Yeah, that's right, because we are connected on those kind of levels, those kind of primal, almost pre-human, pre-Homo sapien ways, limbic ways.
Limbic ways,
resonance.
yeah.
Limbic resonance, as you pointed out, because we share the same, in many cases, not always, nor do we have to, but we share the same DNA. We share much of the same history, positive and negative, and we share sometimes the same vital values. So it's not unreasonable that, this kind of phenomenon, information and communication is there. We're all in the same quantum pool. So your vibration reaches my vibration.
I like how you put that, Bruce, because I was thinking about the studies that Harvard has done on the shared trauma of the inherited trauma of survivors of Holocaust survivors, of children of Holocaust survivors and their grandchildren and so on, and how that is actually traceable within the DNA. So there is not just this sort of, if you want to call it woo-woo stuff or whatever, but it's actually physically imprinted on the DNA, suggesting that something gets inherited. Memory is getting inherited. Trauma is getting inherited. That there is more to this than we fully understand at present.
Yes. Well, at one time, the theories of, what was his name, Lamarck, were very prominent in that learning could be inherited. And then we went through a period of time in which Lamarck fell out of fashion and everything was based on the individual, locked within the individual. Now we're realizing that some things are inherited. Much of memory, the collective unconscious. You by virtue of being a human being this far evolved in human civilization, you inherit certain propensities of thought. We have within our minds and brains patterns that recognize parent-child relationships, that recognize couple sibling relationships and bonding. And it fits a certain pattern because it's inherited. We kind of know that. And we wouldn't call it an instinct necessarily, but it is very close to it. It's a certain resonance that we automatically respond to.
Yeah, there's that sort of something embedded, at such an unconscious level, which is given permission to surface in dreams, because obviously it can bypass all of that sort of heady stuff we like to put in the way of things.
Well, we can edit out a large percentage of what we are thinking during the day because now I don't want to go there, or I don't have time for that, or whatever it might be. But when we go to sleep at night and we dream, there are no editors.
Yeah, quiet down, superego.
There's no research committee. There's no. Yeah, it's just like whatever happens, and then you have to make sense of it.
Yeah,
You can't. Yeah, but it comes in unedited.
I know a lot of people will be quite cross with me if I don't discuss with you our African unconscious, which again is an extension that we've inherited, both trauma and everything that's inherited out of that. The black origins of mysticism and psychology. Tell me, how did that come about as a piece of work for you? Because it's quite incredible.
It's an extension of the work that we've been talking about in terms of inheritance. I mean, if we just look at the anthropological, paleontological, and other, including blood work, we find that, as a species, before any kind of ethnicity arose at all, we came out of Africa as Homo sapiens, maybe a little bit more than a million years ago, after experiencing Australopithecine periods as our species developed. And about 250,000 to 300,000 years ago, by most measures, we became what we are now, Homo sapiens sapien, thinking man. That's not, because there were other forms of Homo sapiens before us that sort of didn't make it, died off. But our particular branch, Homo sapiens sapien, thinking man, survived. And we dwelled in the African continent for at least a few 100,000 years at the very least before that time. Then we spread the different parts of the globe.
I
And
think
when
you
we
call
did,
us the traveling civilization, which I love.
And where we went, we underwent surface changes, but we as a species did not change. So those of us who were Africans by origin, who moved up into Europe and all the way up to the British Isles, we were African looking. There were studies that show that there were African looking persons on Earth in Great Britain 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
We underwent surface changes, adaptations to the climate and to the environment. In other places we went and we were different on the surface. But deep down, we maintain the same genetic structure we are today. And our surface ethnic differentiations are interesting and curious, but they're surfacey. And by the way, they're probably going to change again. As climate change comes about, we will adapt.
Yeah.
We will adapt, and the human species will be here, but what we'll look like, we're not sure. But there's a good chance that all of the current ethnicities with a capital E will have undergone some change. Okay? For some people, that's a great thing because, we're still the same human beings, so on and so forth. Other people are freaked out that somehow they're going to stop being who they are. It's a very surface way of looking at it. We are a profoundly deep species, and we're also a species capable of luminosity and intelligence much more than we've been able to express so far. We're still evolving. We are still evolving, but we're all permutations within that African genotype. And that is the case we've seen in anthropological studies, paleontological studies, the studies of blood, and so forth. And for some of us, that is a very reassuring thing. It indicates underneath, we're all the same spirit. We're all the same peak. Yeah. Through all these various differentiations. And that we will get through our present crises.
Well, that would be just quite wonderful, wouldn't it? And I think one of the bits I was sort of intrigued about was, how you went back and looked at the old African mystery schools, which were the start of some of this thought that still underpins a lot of the sort of spiritual belief structures and religions of today, particularly the dream schools, which is always my interest.
Yeah. And some of the dynamics of the early religions that are practiced today, many dynamics, or I should say, motifs in Christianity, were first evolved in Egypt and Ethiopia. The Blessed Virgin motif.
The Black Madonna, which is
Black
sort of from the cult of Isis.
All of these, came out of us, out of the same mind. And so that mind undercurrents, it's like the unconscious of everyone. And as we go deeper into that, we're going to find that our capacity to do that will travel with us as we travel to the stars.
Yeah. It's, can we, step out of these sort of bodies? Because in the end, it's, I think, if we go back to where we were at the start, and I'm going to use the word telepathy, because that is something that is a communication that is non-verbal. We are stepping outside of this physical structure, whether it's black or white or whatever. And we meet there, and we have always met there. And I think your work with family dreams and with our African unconscious really gets the heart of that it's time to step beyond if we want to reach our true potential in some way.
Our true potential. A figure no less than Sigmund Freud stated that before the formal evolution of language, human beings communicated by way of telepathy.
He did.
Sigmund Freud.
Yeah. And that was his fascination.
I know.
Got this. It's lovely, isn't it? Oh, it's good to go back to the roots in some way, isn't it? As in psychotherapy roots, but and beyond. And I think it's probably a good place to end. Dr. Bynum, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and just, going to places that, shouldn't be taboo, and to look at some of the, I can't remember, Jung called it the spooky other or whatever.
Yes.
And it's there within our family life. We know it is. And that if it's there in the family unconscious, the collective family unconscious, it's going to be in a wider collective unconscious as well.
Right. That's right. And this has been with us since our earliest days in East Africa, Olduvai Gorge, and it is with us now. And I deeply believe that as we spread out to the planets and the stars, we will take this inheritance with us.
Yeah.
But we will look at it and regard it very differently.
Yeah.
In the future. It will not be a source of conflict in the future, but what integrates us to the future.
Yeah, we're a source of power as well. It's going to be.
There are enormous powers in our enormous powers that we've only alluded to briefly when we talked about psi phenomena, telepathy, but there's also precognition, there's also psychokinesis, all of these latent capacities of our mind. But we have to, first of all, harness our mind and our attention before we can work with that. Otherwise, we'll be irresponsible.
Yeah. Bring it on in our dreams. That's what I say.
This has been very enjoyable, Laura. Thank you for inviting me onto the program, and I hope your audience found some value in it.
I hope so too. Many thanks indeed. So, thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Don't forget to like us and leave comments on your favourite podcast platform. As I'm sure you know, that's the way we build an audience for the Dreamboat podcast, and also to spread news about dreaming. And as we said, there are many ways you can share your dreams at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute.
Yes, we have courses, events, and workshops, and we want to hear from you. So check out the show notes for links, or find us on Instagram and on our Facebook page and on our website at driccpe.org.uk. And if you want to explore your dreams further, or you would like to support us, you can join the DRI as a member for just £30 a year. As a member, you will get discounts for all of our events and short courses. You'll get our newsletter with latest dream research news, and we'll also be adding other special member benefits during the year. Of course, members' dreams will always be given preference for reading on the podcast Dream of the Week slot. So go to the link on the show notes and become a DRI member today. Keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.